Many thanks go out to Lexus of Royal Oak that are able to send this car my way for me to review. Car advertisements typically use the words like sporty, athletic, involving to try and sell their cars. Makes the car seem a little more characterful, and then that would hopefully lead to the buyer making a more emotional decision. But at the end of the day, most of those words are just marketing jargon that have nothing to do with the driving experience, which should always be a bit of a letdown. But this Lexus RX is none of those words, and that makes it one of the best cars I've ever driven. And to find out why, that answer, plus many other things that you should consider, is coming up here on The Drive Guide. So first let's break down the RX. So first of all, we have the 3.5 litre V6 that puts down 295 horsepower, 268 pound-feet of torque. The trim model we're in is the top of the line executive, and it's interesting how Lexus has this trim pitched, because for the exact same money you can get the F Sport Series 3. So buyers sort of have the choice of, if they're looking for the luxury SUV, they go with the executive, and if they're looking for the top of the line sports version, they go with the F Sport Series 3. And with the executive, you get pretty much every feature that you could imagine. You get all the safety equipment, 360-degree cameras, wireless phone charging, 12.3-inch display, you get a heads-up unit, you get a 15-speaker sound system, these ventilated seats, a dual-zone climate control. The list goes on and on and on. The lack of invasive noises like tire roar and wind noise is probably due to just how well built this car is. You get this wonderful sensation of isolation when you're driving this car, and it all really comes down to the fit and finish, which gives this car such a sense of solidity that I haven't experienced in a car that's this sort of size. It's nothing short of incredible. When it comes to the design of the interior, I do love the colors that they use and this wood and metal trim that's here in the center console and a little bit here on the door cards. The ride comfort is certainly aided by the seats that we have here, which tall people rejoice have thigh extenders. Things I don't like about this car on the highway is probably the lane keep assist. And I've been in quite a few different cars that all feature this type of technology, but none of them has been this invasive. Even if I'm, a good 3 or 4 inches off, the steering wheel really pushes me back into the lane, and I don't really like that. So first thing I do is actually turn off the lane keep assist altogether. Another issue that I have with this car that is admittedly sort of my problem is that the way I would sit up with my head against the back of the seat, I don't have that much headroom here, but if I just lean in slightly towards that, I've got a huge amount of space. If they were able to make either this section a little bit taller or the glass a little bit wider, that would solve the problem. But as I said, it's more sort of my issue, not the fault of the car. For this car review, in all honesty, I'm not going to take it onto the twisties, because that is not the point of this car. To give you a very brief rundown, this car does have a sport mode, and you can put the shifts into a manual sport mode, but it really isn't well suited for that environment. It's wallowy, the engine isn't all that engaging, and it doesn't really motivate you to go fast. And after 3 corners trying to take them enthusiastically, I switched just back in the normal. It's a luxury cruiser. Leave it at that. Don't make it any more complicated than it needs to be. When we talk about any luxury car, detail is one of the things that reviewers like to focus on. So what I want to focus on with the detail of this car is that in these pull handles here on the door, you have this, I don't know what it is, some kind of felt fabric here that's really nice to the touch. You have this wonderful stitching along the door cards and on the wheel and down the center here. The trimming of this wood and metal I think looks really lovely. Got the analog clock in the center there. the felt up along the roof line and on the sun visors. And then another neat feature is that with Lexus, when you're raising or lowering the windows, they slow down every time they're about to hit the top or the bottom, so you don't get that kind of thud. It just slowly glides in when it's just about to hit the top. That is a really cool feature. On the highway, I do think this could potentially be one of the best cars to drive on a long distance. It's just so relaxing, and I feel like I can just unwind in this car. I've got every amenity I could want, I've got plenty of space, and I've got a lot of really interesting things to look at. So saying that, let's pull off of the highway now, go into town so we can show off what this car is like to live with on a day-to-day basis. First thing we have to talk about is just how massive this screen is. Look at it. It's 12.3 inches, and I feel like you could just rip this thing out of this car and take it to a wedding to serve hors d'oeuvres on it. It is hilariously huge, but it's high res, and the colors are really vibrant, and the screen's really bright. But the way you interact with it is a little strange. All the previous Lexus vehicles I've driven so far, they've had a touchpad down here like a laptop, but this one has a mouse like what you would find on a desktop. The logic between those two systems is pretty much the same, but with this mouse, you can move it around and it hooks on the things you're aiming for well, but it just seems a little twitchier than swiping your finger across. I definitely prefer the other system. This car weighs around 4,500 pounds, and you've got no inclination that it weighs that much because the steering is light, the power is ample, and that makes this car really easy to drive. It's just effortless. There's a lot of other things that I need to point out to you, so let's pull over somewhere so I can show them off to you. In the back of the RX, things are pretty good back here. I have a little bit of knee room, a little bit of foot room, and a fair amount of headroom. But you do have plenty of things to play around with, like the outside seats, which are heated. You have an armrest that folds down here to have a little more space, and then your cup holders. You also have a manual sunshade on both windows, but the thing that stands out to everyone when they get into the back seat is just how large this sunroof is. You can see everything. But the thing that's the best for me is that these seats are all independent of one another, but you can fold this side and then this side electrically. So there's a couple buttons in the back, which I'll show you in a minute, but what that means is you can be sitting in an upright position as you are now, or push the seat back slightly, and then you can lie back and relax. One of the biggest issues I have with the RX actually deals with the trunk itself. So first of all, it has this rather stupid gimmick where you hover your hand over the Lexus symbol and then it opens. And I call it stupid because as a touchless system, we've seen manufacturers that you might kick your foot underneath and then that opens. But the other thing that bothers me is that as we have the trunk closed, you have a button right underneath. I just feel like the logic for this system is not entirely useful and therefore a bit pointless. But now that the trunks open up, let's point out a few other things. First of all, you do have this security cover here, which is easy to just take out. You just pull back on one side and then it's out. But unfortunately, there isn't a good space to hide it underneath here where you have your spare tire. So if you want to take it out, you'll probably have to lug it along with you. But then you do see that you have the three seats that if you want to fold down the middle one, you can just by itself. And then if you want to fold down the two outside seats, you hit these buttons back here, and then it'll all fold down by itself. That's pretty cool. It's very clear to me what this car is and what its mission is, and I do think it fulfills its mission very well. And I see this car sort of as the Lexus signature dish. This is what they do best. And for most people, this is what they see of Lexus as well. And from what I've experienced with this car so far, it certainly didn't let me down. Many thanks again go out to Lexus of Royal Oak that were able to send this car my way to review. Thank you so much for taking the time to watching this video, and I hope to see you again on The Drive Guide.